The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with cold indifference. Suspended in a colossal space station orbiting a dying star, representatives from dozens of species gathered around the circular council table, each a symbol of millennia-old power. Their eyes, whether scaled, faceted, or humanoid, were fixed on the hollow projection of Earth, flickering with the faint blue glow of a world about to be condemned. Admiral Reiko Voss watched from her command chair aboard the flagship, Odyssey orbiting the pale planet below. Earth, the last refuge of humanity, was being sentenced by the very powers that once promised protection. For centuries, humanity had been the wild card, reckless, inventive, brutal, and unyielding. They'd survived war, famine, and cosmic disasters, but their growing ambition and unpredictability had unsettled the Council. The verdict came in cold voices. The species known as humans have become a threat to galactic stability, intoned the Council speaker, an immense crystalline entity whose voice resonated like a chorus. Despite repeated admonitions, their behavior has grown volatile, their technology dangerously unregulated. For the safety of all, we decree, humanity shall be exiled beyond the galaxy's border, to the abyss. A ripple of murmurs swept through the chamber. The abyss was a name spoken only in dread, a dark, uncharted region of space, torn by black holes, chaotic wormholes, and inhabited by creatures that defied understanding. No ship had ever returned from there. It was effectively a cosmic prison. Back aboard the Odyssey, the crew's faces were grim but defiant. Reiko felt the weight of history on her shoulders. The exile was intended as a death sentence. The Council expected humanity to vanish quietly into oblivion, but humanity never did what was expected. "Prepare the Exodus Armada," Reiko ordered. Her voice was steel wrapped in resolve. "We don't disappear. We adapt. We survive. We fight." The fleet was a patchwork of vessels, military cruisers, scientific research ships, converted cargo haulers, all patched together with whatever technology humanity had managed to scrape. The flag of Earth flew defiantly atop the command ship as they crossed the last safe communication boundary, beyond which the galaxy's laws held no sway. As the Odyssey passed the event horizon marking the edge of Council space, a sudden crackle burst over the comm channels. A faint rhythmic pulse echoed in every frequency. It was unlike any known signal, old, organic, and almost pleading. The abyss was alive. Reiko's jaw tightened. Isolate and analyze the source. This could be a trap, or a lifeline. The abyss loomed like a black maw on the star maps, a place where light bent and time distorted. The humans had no choice. They were cast out, but they would make the abyss their forge. Inside the command center, Lieutenant Mara Chen, the ship's lead xenotechnologist, studied the ancient signal. "It's unlike anything in the archives. There's a pattern, but it's fragmented, almost like a warning or a call for help." "From who?" Reiko asked, pacing. "And why here?" The silence was broken by a burst of static. The abyss beyond was already testing them. The ship's sensors flared. Gravitational anomalies, strange energy readings, and what looked like immense creatures moving just beyond visual range. "This place is a graveyard," murmured Chief Engineer Anwar Malik. "Lost colonies, dead stars, wreckage from civilizations long gone." "Then let's add humanity's name to the list," Reiko said, voice hardening. "But not as the defeated. We will make this place our home, or die trying." She looked out the viewport where distant stars flickered in the dark void. Somewhere in that darkness was their future, a future that no one else wanted. And yet, a spark of hope flickered in Reiko's chest. Exile wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new, something no council member could imagine. "We set course for the nearest asteroid belt," she commanded. "Begin construction of the first Forge World. We build from the bones of the dead. We fight for every inch." Her crew nodded, faces set with determination and fear. This was the crucible. Humanity had been thrown into the abyss, but they were not broken. They were sharpened. The Council may have cast the first stone, but humanity's response would be a hammer blow. As the Odyssey jumped to warp speed into the unknown, the mysterious signal continued to pulse, rhythmic, persistent, echoing from the abyssal darkness. Reiko allowed herself a grim smile. Let them watch. Let them fear what comes next. Because humans didn't just survive exile. They conquered the abyss. The abyss was nothing like the galaxy they had known. The familiar. Laws of physics warped and twisted under strange forces. Space itself seemed alive, groaning beneath the pressure of unseen masses and impossible gravitational tides. Every sensor reading from the Odyssey and the ships that followed was a maddening puzzle. Data spikes that defied interpretation, light bent into fractals, shadows that moved against reason. Admiral Reiko Voss stood on the bridge, watching the flickering star maps, her jaw tight. Behind her, the Exodus Armada was battered but intact, holding together through sheer will and hastily improvised repairs. The exiled fleet's commanders whispered rumors of ships that had vanished, consumed by invisible black holes or torn apart by storms of radiation. Yet it was the derelict Ark drifting in the void that caught their attention. The Vadrani Ark. Massive ancient vessel of unknown origin, broken but still intact, looming like a carcass caught in a celestial net. No records existed of the Vadrani in Council archives, only myths whispered among deep space smugglers of an empire that vanished in the abyss centuries ago. Scan for life signs, Reiko ordered. Her voice barely concealed a flicker of hope. If anything remained on that ship, it could mean answers or weapons. The Odyssey's sensors probed the Ark's hull. The readings were faint but unmistakable. Signs of biomechanical life, dormant but not dead. A graveyard of creatures that might outmatch even the ferocity of humans. Lieutenant Mara Chen frowned, staring at the screen. It's alive, somehow. There's a containment field active but barely holding. Prepare an away team, Reiko commanded. We're boarding. But with extreme caution, the boarding party descended through the hull breach, their suits illuminating the Ark's cavernous interior. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins, and strange glyphs etched themselves into the metal surfaces. The air was thick with a faint hum, something mechanical and organic fused into a living machine. Deep in the bowels of the ship, the team found the sealed chamber. Inside, dormant creatures lay coiled, sleek, segmented forms with armored exoskeletons and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. They're alive, whispered Sergeant Vance, weapon ready. Suddenly, the containment field faltered. A low growl reverberated through the chamber. The creatures stirred. The Mireborn had awakened. Panic erupted. The crew scrambled as the creatures lunged, fast, vicious, and horrifyingly adaptive. Their armored shells absorbed energy blasts, their razor limbs slicing through the team's defenses. The survivors barely made it back to the ship, their bodies scarred, their minds haunted. Back aboard the Odyssey, emergency medics worked tirelessly. The infection spread, not just physical wounds, but a creeping mental influence. The Mireborn were not mere beasts. They were parasites, able to infiltrate and control. Reiko stood before her officers. This is no ordinary enemy. We're dealing with something insidious. Containment protocols are failing, reported Mara. If the infection spreads, it could consume the entire fleet. Then we fight fire with fire, Reiko said, her voice ablade. We adapt, or we die. Under her orders, scientists and engineers worked around the clock, reverse engineering the Vadrani tech to develop new weapons, pulse disruptors, neural jammers, bioelectric grenades designed to incapacitate the Mireborn without endangering humans. Meanwhile, the fleet moved deeper into the abyss, into asteroid fields rich with raw materials. They began constructing the first forge worlds, mobile manufacturing stations hidden within rocky outcrops, where human industry roared back to life. Yet not all was unity. Fear bred suspicion. Some crews whispered of surrender, others plotted escape back to Council space, hoping for mercy. Reiko crushed these mutinies with unyielding resolve. There was no home left for them but the abyss. and somewhere in the shifting darkness, the faint signal that had beckoned them still pulsed, a haunting beacon in the void. One night, as Reiko stood alone on the observation deck, she saw a shadow moving beyond the fleet's sensor range. Massive, slow, and terrifying. A colossal creature far larger than anything recorded in human history, drifting silently through the abyss. It paused, as if sensing her gaze, and then vanished into the darkness. Reiko's voice was barely a whisper. We're not just lost in the abyss, we're hunted. Yet within that fear burned something stronger, a fierce human defiance. They had been exiled to die. Instead, they were awakening the abyss. The abyss was a crucible, and humanity's steel was being tested by fire. The initial shock of the Mire-born assaults had nearly shattered the Exodus armada. The parasitic creatures spread like wildfire, infiltrating ships, devouring minds and flesh alike. Panic surged through the fleet. Yet from this chaos, a cold resolve emerged. Admiral Reiko Voss stood at the heart of the command bridge aboard the Odyssey, eyes sharp beneath the harsh lighting. We don't run, we don't hide, we fight smarter. Her voice carried the weight of a leader who had stared into the void and refused to blink. The engineer's workshop hummed relentlessly. Deep in the forge world known as Aegis 7, a transformed asteroid belching sparks and molten metal, humans worked feverishly. They had no choice but to evolve their weapons and tactics. Lieutenant Mara Chen supervised the integration of alien tech recovered from the Vadrani Ark. These pulse disruptors can disable Mire-born armor, but we need to be faster, deadlier. Her hands danced over the console, tweaking energy outputs and weapon calibrations. We'll combine it with neural combat interfaces, suggested Captain Jamal Reyes, commander of the Harbinger. Pilots linked directly to their ships. Faster. Reactions, sharper precision. We fight as one. Risky, Mara warned. The neural link strains the mind. We've seen pilots burn out or go catatonic. We don't have luxury, Reiko said. If we don't push the edge, we lose everything. The first neural combat units were deployed amid mounting fear and skepticism. Pilots connected to their ships through sophisticated interfaces, syncing brain waves with weapon systems and propulsion. The bond was intimate, brutal, and often terrifying. During a sudden ambush near the Black Coil Nebula, the new tactics were put to the test. Mire-born swarms glowing with malignant bioluminescence surged like a tidal wave. Human ships danced in perfect sync, their weapons firing in deadly patterns as neural pilots anticipated every move. The tide turned. The swarms were beaten back, with heavy losses, but the fleet survived, yet victory bred its own demons. Mutiny detected, blared the Odyssey's security system. In the maze-like corridors of the flagship, dissent had festered. Crew members, broken by fear and loss, questioned the command. Some demanded a retreat. Others sought to seize power for themselves. Reiko's response was swift and brutal. She confronted the mutineers in the command deck, flanked by loyal Marines. We stand on the edge of extinction, she said, voice cold and unyielding. But I promise you this. I will not allow fear or treason to doom us all. The abyss will not swallow us, because we tore ourselves apart. Her words ignited a fragile unity, but trust was brittle. The threat from without was matched only by the threat from within. Meanwhile, the fleet expanded its foothold, constructing more forge worlds, floating factories and fortresses built from asteroid debris. These outposts churned out ships, weapons, and supplies. They were humanity's iron lungs breathing life into a dying hope. Amidst the industrial roar, new alliances began to take shape. Survivors from minor abyssal species, refugees of the Mire-born onslaught, sought shelter with humans. Drawn by humanity's defiance and ingenuity, they offered knowledge of the abyss's hidden dangers. Humans fight like storms, said an emissary from the crustacean-like Drakari. We follow the storm. Yet even allies brought challenges. Cultural clashes, mistrust, and old grudges simmered beneath the surface. Reiko's council was a fragile tapestry woven from desperation and ambition. One evening, aboard the Odyssey, Mara and Jamal debated fiercely. If we keep pushing neural interfaces, we risk losing more pilots to mental collapse, Mara said, rubbing tired eyes. We need safer methods. Jamal leaned in. We adapt or die, it's that simple. Reiko overheard the argument and stepped in. Balance. Innovation with caution. We survive because we're human. Because we endure. No sacrifice is too great. But that sacrifice weighed heavily on them all. The horrors of the Mire-born left scars deeper than flesh. Some soldiers returned changed, haunted by the parasitic tendrils that had grazed their minds. Others questioned the cost of survival. And beyond the immediate threat, something ancient stirred. Sensor readings from the outer abyss revealed titanic movements, creatures and machines of a scale incomprehensible, shadows passing through space-time, like ghosts. The mysterious signal that had first lured them deeper pulsed steadily. A message? A warning? Or a summons? Reiko stared into the void beyond the viewport, feeling the cold embrace of the abyss. Humanity had been forged by fire and exile. The Mire-born were only the beginning. In this darkness, she whispered, we will find our light. Because humanity didn't just survive in the abyss, they fought, adapted, and grew stronger, shaped by the fire that would either consume them or make them legends. The abyss was a crucible, and humanity's steel was being tested by fire. The initial shock of the Mire-born assaults had nearly shattered the Exodus armada. The parasitic creatures spread like wildfire, infiltrating ships, devouring minds and flesh alike. Panic surged through the fleet. Yet from this chaos, a cold resolve emerged. Admiral Reiko Voss stood at the heart of the command bridge aboard the Odyssey, eyes sharp beneath the harsh lighting. We don't run. We don't hide. We fight smarter. Her voice carried the weight of a leader who had stared into the void and refused to blink. The engineer's workshop hummed relentlessly. Deep in the forge world known as Aegis 7, a transformed, asteroid-belching sparks and molten metal, humans worked feverishly. They had no choice but to evolve their weapons and tactics. Lieutenant Mara Chen supervised the integration of alien tech recovered from the Vadrani Ark. These pulse disruptors can disable Mire-born armor, but we need to be faster, deadlier. Her hands danced over the console, tweaking energy outputs and weapon calibrations. We'll combine it with neural combat interfaces, suggested Captain Jamal Reyes, commander of the Harbinger. Pilots linked directly to their ships. Faster. Reactions, sharper precision. We fight as one. Risky, Mara warned. The neural link strains the mind. We've seen pilots burn out or go catatonic. We don't have luxury, Reiko said. If we don't push the edge, we lose everything. The first neural combat units were deployed amid mounting fear and skepticism. Pilots connected to their ships through sophisticated interfaces, syncing brainwaves with weapon systems and propulsion. The bond was intimate, brutal, and often terrifying. During a sudden ambush near the Black Coil Nebula, the new tactics were put to the test. Mire-born swarms glowing with malignant bioluminescence surged like a tidal wave. Human ships danced in perfect sync, their weapons firing in deadly patterns as neural pilots anticipated every move. The tide turned. The swarms were beaten back, with heavy losses, but the fleet survived. Yet victory bred its own demons. Mutiny detected, blared the Odyssey's security system. In the maze-like corridors of the flagship, dissent had festered. Crew members, broken by fear and loss, questioned the command. Some demanded a retreat. Others sought to seize power for themselves. Reiko's response was swift and brutal. She confronted the mutineers in the command deck, flanked by loyal Marines. We stand on the edge of extinction, she said, voice cold and unyielding. But I promise you this. I will not allow fear or treason to doom us all. The abyss will not swallow us because we tore ourselves apart. Her words ignited a fragile unity, but trust was brittle. The threat from without was matched only by the threat from within. Meanwhile, the fleet expanded its foothold, constructing more forge worlds, floating factories and fortresses built from asteroid debris. These outposts churned out ships, weapons, and supplies. They were humanity's iron lungs, breathing life into a dying hope. Amidst the industrial roar, new alliances began to take shape. Survivors from minor abyssal species, refugees of the Mire-born onslaught, sought shelter with humans. Drawn by humanity's defiance and ingenuity, they offered knowledge of the abyss's hidden dangers. "Humans fight like storms," said an emissary from the crustacean-like Drakari. "We follow the storm." Yet even allies brought challenges. Cultural clashes, mistrust, and old grudges simmered beneath the surface. Reiko's council was a fragile tapestry woven from desperation and ambition. One evening, aboard the Odyssey, Mara and Jamal debated fiercely. "If we keep pushing neural interfaces, we risk losing more pilots to mental collapse," Mara said, rubbing tired eyes. "We need safer methods." Jamal leaned in. "We adapt or die, it's that simple." Reiko overheard the argument and stepped in. "Balance. Innovation with caution. We survive because we're human. Because we endure. No sacrifice is too great." But that sacrifice weighed heavily on them all. The horrors of the Mire-born left scars deeper than flesh. Some soldiers returned changed, haunted by the parasitic tendrils that had grazed their minds. Others questioned the cost of survival. And beyond the immediate threat, something ancient stirred. Sensor readings from the outer abyss revealed titanic movements, creatures and machines of a scale incomprehensible, shadows passing through space-time, like ghosts. The mysterious signal that had first lured them deeper pulsed steadily. A message? A warning? Or a summons? Reiko stared into the void beyond the viewport, feeling the cold embrace of the abyss. Humanity had been forged by fire and exile. The Mire-born were only the beginning. "In this darkness," she whispered, "we will find our light." Because humanity didn't just survive in the abyss. They fought, adapted, and grew stronger, shaped by the fire that would either consume them or make them legends. The revelation shook the Exodus Armada to its core. Humanity was not just exiled, they were cast into a trap. The abyss, a forsaken battleground of ancient galactic powers, was a crucible designed to break the defiant. And the Mire-born, monstrous parasites, were a weapon left behind by a vanished civilization. Admiral Reiko Voss paced the command bridge of the Odyssey, grappling with the weight of truth. The holographic image of the crystalline artifact flickered before her, a silent witness to the past's cruelty. "We've been pawns," she admitted quietly, "but pawns with the power to change the game." Her officers exchanged uneasy glances. The Council's betrayal was a bitter pill. Trust was a shattered relic. Yet they had no choice but to keep fighting. Meanwhile, tension simmered within the fleet. The alliance with the Atra, though vital, bred unease. Some humans whispered of betrayal, calling Kael'thar's people cold and inscrutable. Others feared the genetic augmentations, the splicers, as they were called, viewed as abominations by the unaltered. Lieutenant Mara Chen faced the growing divide. "We're losing ourselves," she told Reiko in a rare moment of vulnerability. "If we lose what makes us human, what are we really fighting for?" Reiko's gaze was steady. "Survival demands sacrifice, but we must remember who we are, no matter what the abyss tries to make us." The Odyssey's sensors picked up a strange anomaly near the ruins on the shattered moon, a series of rapid energy pulses unlike anything recorded before. "We're not alone," Mara warned. "Something else is waking up." An expedition was organized, including human and Atrog scouts, neural-linked pilots, and genetic splicers. The group descended into the ruins, their footsteps echoing in the crystal halls. Deep within, they discovered a sealed chamber, its door etched with warnings in a dead language. With combined human and Atrog technology, the door creaked open. Inside lay a massive biotechnological entity, half machine, half organic, a relic from the ancient war. Its core pulsed weakly, but a faint consciousness flickered within. "This is a sentinel," Kael'thar explained gravely. "A guardian left behind to contain the Mire-born." Mara approached cautiously. "Can it help us?" The sentinel's eyes glowed, and through a neural interface Mara felt a flood of images, memories of the war, of the weaponization of the Mireborn, and a secret. A fail-safe code buried deep within the abyss capable of halting the parasite's spread. But activating it required access to multiple ancient nodes scattered across the abyss, each fiercely guarded by Mireborn and corrupted machines. Back aboard the Odyssey, debate raged. Chasing fairy tales won't save us, a hardened officer argued. We need to focus on building strength, not chasing ghosts. Reiko silenced the room. This is our chance. To end the Mireborn threat once and for all, we will split our forces. Some will fight, others will seek the nodes. The fleet split, moving deeper into the abyss's heart. Missions grew deadlier. Ships vanished. Neural pilots pushed beyond their limits. The splicers led daring assaults. Their alien enhancements a terrifying blend of human courage and otherworldly power. But the abyss's darkness was not without secrets. Whispered rumors spoke of a hidden faction, exiled humans who rejected both the Council and the alliance with the Atrog. They called themselves the Voidborn, survivors twisted by abyssal horrors, masters of guerrilla warfare and shadow technology. One such encounter nearly ended in disaster. The Odyssey was ambushed by Voidborn raiders, their ships wreathed in stealth fields and armed with weapons scavenged from the abyss itself. Reiko's tactical genius turned the tide, but the encounter left scars, questions about loyalty and the future. We're fractured, Reiko confided to Mara. Enemies outside and ghosts within. Mara's response was grim. The abyss changes us all. We can't afford to lose who we are. Amidst the battles, Reiko received a transmission, encrypted, ancient, and unmistakably human. It was from Earth. A clandestine resistance had survived, hidden from the Council's eyes. They had uncovered fragments of the Council's darkest secrets, proof that humanity's exile was planned from the start to cover up the Council's involvement in the ancient war. The message was clear. Humanity's fight in the abyss was not just for survival. It was to reclaim their stolen history and confront the true enemy behind the Council. As the fleet prepared for the next assault on a Mireborn stronghold, Reiko's resolve hardened. The abyss has tried to bury us, she said, voice echoing in the command chamber. But humanity's fire will burn brighter than any darkness. We will rise. We will reclaim our place, not as exiles, but as conquerors. The shadows of the past stretched long and cold, but the future blazed with a fierce, unyielding light. The Atur Black Coil Nebula was a swirling tempest of charged particles and gravitational eddies, a natural fortress where the Mireborn had entrenched themselves in terrifying numbers. For months, the Exodus Armada had avoided it, but the time for hesitation was over. This is our chance to cripple the Mireborn, Admiral Reiko Voss announced, standing before the fleet's war council aboard the Odyssey. The nodes we must activate lie beneath the nebula's storms. We take Black Coil, or we lose everything. The plan was daring and dangerous, a full-scale siege against the Mireborn's core hive within the nebula's heart. Human and Atrog ships aligned in a massive battle formation, neural pilots linked to their vessels, their minds synchronized to act as one. The splicers, enhanced beyond human limits, prepared for boarding and infiltration. Mara Chen oversaw the deployment of the new bioelectric pulse weapons, designed specifically to disrupt the Mireborn's regenerative biology. As the fleet crossed into the nebula, chaos erupted. The storm warped sensors and scrambled communications. Dark shapes, sleek and swift, darted through the ion storms. The Mireborn swarms, relentless and savage. Their screeches cut through the static, a nightmarish chorus of war. The first wave hit like a tidal wave. Ships were torn apart, torn from the formation. Neural pilots screamed as their minds struggled to keep pace with the carnage. The Odyssey shuddered under heavy fire. Reiko remained calm, issuing commands that danced on the razor's edge of order and desperation. Focus on the swarm breakers, she ordered. Splicers, prepare for boarding runs. Jamal Reyes led the neural-linked fighters with brutal precision, weaving through the storm to strike at Mireborn command vessels. Mara's pulse teams fired coordinated volleys, frying the bio-armor of advancing creatures. Yet the Mireborn adapted quickly. New strains emerged, larger, faster, their exoskeletons glowing with dark energy that resisted even the advanced weaponry. In the thick of battle, Mara's unit was sent on a critical mission: infiltrate a Mireborn hive ship and plant a disruption device that could sever the parasite's communication network. Inside the hive ship, the air was thick with a sickening bioelectric hum. Walls pulsated like living tissue, corridors shifted unnervingly. The splicers moved with lethal grace, their alien enhancements granting reflexes that human biology could never match. But the deeper they went, the more the hive resisted. Mireborn, guards swarmed the corridors, their razor claws snapping, their glowing eyes filled with primal rage. Mara's heart pounded as they fought forward, a deadly dance of survival and destruction. The disruption device was secured and activated, sending shockwaves that shattered the hive's neural network. Back in space, the impact was immediate. The swarm's coordination faltered, its attacks losing cohesion. "Now!" Reiko commanded. "Push forward!" The fleet surged into the nebula's eye, their weapons blazing. The combined human-Itrog forces tore through the remaining Mireborn defenses, but victory came at a cost. The disruption device triggered a chain reaction in the hive's core, destabilizing the surrounding nebula. Massive gravitational anomalies rippled outward, threatening to tear ships apart. "Evacuate!" Reiko ordered, her voice grim but steady. Neural pilots fought the storm, pushing their ships to the limits. The splicers led desperate boarding retreats. Mara's unit barely escaped, their ship buffeted by the collapsing nebula. As the fleet pulled back, battered and bloodied, Reiko surveyed the destruction. Black Coil was lost, but the key nodes beneath the nebula were secured, activated in the chaos. The Mireborn's hold was weakened for the first time in generations, but the abyss was far from tamed. Among the fleet, whispers grew. The Voidborn, those exiled humans twisted by the abyss, offered aid, revealing hidden paths and secrets in exchange for acceptance. Reiko weighed the risks. Could she trust these ghosts from humanity's darker side? Or would their alliance fracture the fragile unity? As the fleet limped toward the Forge Worlds, Reiko received an encrypted transmission from Earth's resistance. "We have uncovered the Council's final move," the message warned. "They plan to purge the Abyss and all its inhabitants before humanity can rise. Time is running out." The Abyssal War was no longer just about survival or conquest. It was about destiny, and the fight for humanity's future had only just begun. The encrypted transmission from Earth's resistance had sent a chill through Admiral Reiko Voss's spine. The Council was not merely indifferent to humanity's plight. They were orchestrating a final purge. The Abyss, with all its horrors and battles, was slated to become a tomb not only for the exiled but for anyone who defied the Council's will. In the stark command chamber of the Odyssey, Reiko faced her senior officers and Itrog allies. "They want to wipe us out before we grow too strong," she said, voice heavy but resolute. "We can't let that happen." Kael'thar's dark eyes narrowed. "The Council's power is immense. Direct confrontation risks annihilation." Jamal Reyes slammed a fist on the table. "We've been fighting annihilation since we arrived. What choice do we have now? We strike first. Take the fight to the Council." Reiko nodded. "We need more than firepower. We need allies, hidden factions within the Council, defectors, spies. If we're to survive, we must become ghosts in their halls." The fleet's strategists began weaving a new plan, one that involved not only space battles but sabotage, espionage, and diplomacy. Meanwhile, the Voidborn approached with an unexpected offer. Their leader, a wraith-like figure named Silas, sought parley aboard the Odyssey. "You fear us," Silas said, voice barely more than a whisper. "But we share your enemy. The Council exiled us here too, cast us into darkness. Join us, or perish, divided." Reiko studied the man who was as much a shadow as a human. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford, but necessity demanded an alliance. "We accept," she said, sealing a pact forged in desperation. As the Voidborn integrated with human and Atrog forces, Reiko authorized a covert mission to the Council's capital, a gleaming bastion of power light years away. The mission: infiltrate the Council's inner sanctum, expose their plans, and ignite rebellion. Lieutenant Mara Chen led the infiltration team. Their ship, cloaked by advanced Atrog stealth tech, slipped through the Council's defenses like a ghost. Inside the capital, the team navigated a labyrinth of gleaming towers and endless corridors, shadows hiding dangers at every turn. They uncovered chilling evidence. The Council had activated a colossal weapon, an ancient dreadnought buried in the abyss's outer rim, capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single blast. Time was running out. Mara's team sent detailed intel. Back to Reiko, who immediately prepared the fleet for a desperate assault. The Odyssey and its allies raced through the abyss, shadows lengthening as the Council's dreadnought loomed ahead, a massive fortress of dark metal and pulsating energy. The ensuing battle was apocalyptic. Council warships swarmed, weapons blazing with terrifying precision. The Mireborn, surprisingly, seemed to flank the Council's forces, suggesting an unholy alliance or manipulation beyond understanding. Neural pilots fought with desperation, their minds pushed to breaking. Splicers led boarding parties into the dreadnought's hull, seeking to sabotage its core. Reiko commanded from the bridge, every decision a razor's edge between victory and oblivion. Amid the chaos, Mara's infiltration team breached the dreadnought's command center. They faced Council loyalists wielding ruthless technology, but the Splicers' enhancements gave them an edge. In a final, desperate act, Mara deployed a virus designed to disrupt the dreadnought's power systems. Lights flickered, engines shuddered, the massive weapon began to collapse from within. With the dreadnought crippled, the Council's fleet faltered. Reiko seized the moment, ordering a relentless counterattack. The Council's forces retreated, their plans thwarted, but at a terrible cost. The Odyssey lay battered. Countless lives were lost. As silence fell over the battlefield, Reiko stared out into the abyss, the weight of command heavier than ever. "We've won a battle," she said quietly, "but the war is far from over." The Council's gambit had failed, for now. But the real fight for humanity's future was just beginning. And in the dark reaches of space, unseen eyes watched. Allies and enemies alike waited for the next move. The abyss held many secrets yet. The shattered remnants of the Odyssey drifted silently among the wreckage of the battlefield, the scars of war etched deep into its hull. Outside the viewport, the stars glittered coldly, indifferent to the blood and sacrifice that had brought humanity and its allies to this fragile moment. Admiral Reiko Voss stood alone on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the abyssal void beyond. The Council's dreadnought was destroyed, their purge thwarted, but victory tasted bitter. The cost had been unimaginable: friends lost, ships destroyed, and the growing question of what survival truly meant. Behind her, the alliance she had forged, the humans, the Atrug, and even the Voidborn were beginning to rebuild. The abyssal war zone was no longer a tomb, but a battleground for a new future. A communication ping interrupted the heavy silence. The resistance from Earth sent new intelligence. The Council was fracturing. Some factions secretly opposed the purge, others whispered of rebellion. The cracks were growing. Reiko's mind raced. The Council's power had always seemed absolute, but now, hope flickered like a distant star. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered, voice steady. "We're going home, not as exiles, but as conquerors." Over the next weeks, the Exodus Armada, repaired and refitted. Genetic splicers trained alongside Atrog warriors, blending human resilience with alien technology. The Voidborn shared shadow techniques, turning guerrilla tactics into formal strategy. Yet despite the alliance's strength, doubts lingered. Mara Chen confided one evening in Reiko, "We changed in the abyss. We're stronger, but not the same. Will the galaxy accept us?" Reiko smiled, a rare softness in her eyes. "We define ourselves, not the Council, not our enemies. Humanity's strength is in our will to rise, no matter how dark the abyss. When the fleet finally left the abyss behind, a new mission awaited, one of reclamation and reckoning. They would confront the Council on their homeworld, expose their lies, and demand justice. The Council's capital was a gleaming citadel of cold power. But this time, the Exodus Armada arrived, not as supplicants, but as a storm. The battle for the galaxy's future was fierce and unrelenting, but the Alliance's unity was unbreakable. Where once humans were pawns, now they were players, leaders. In the final confrontation, Reiko faced the Council's High Chancellor, a figure cloaked in authority and arrogance. "You cannot defy the Council," the Chancellor hissed. "You are exiles, rebels, doomed to fail." Reiko's voice rang clear and defiant. "We are survivors. We are warriors. And the Abyss taught us one truth. The strongest do not survive by might alone, but by uniting against darkness." With the Council's grip shattered and their secrets laid bare, a new era dawned. The Abyss was no longer a prison. It was a crucible that forged humanity's destiny. As stars burned brightly in the void, Reiko stood tall, knowing the journey was far from over. But this time, humanity would face the future on its own terms. The Abyss had tested them, and they had risen.